What's up, everybody? Welcome to the pre-lock show here for the final football game of the season, the Super Bowl. Happy to have you joining us as usual on Rotogrinders as we break down the pre-lock showdown slate here, just like we have all the other showdown slates throughout the season here for NFL action. This game just happens to carry a little more national importance. So we'll see what we can break down for you here over the last 30 minutes leading up to the lock of the big game. I am Justin Van Zuden, a.k.a. STL Cardinals 84. I've got Dan Gaspar, a.k.a. Tuttle on one side. Tuttle, what's going on?
Not much. Told you guys pre-show I'd be on and off the mute button. My kids are hyped. It is not about the Super Bowl, unfortunately. They're hyped about the most recent Book of Boba Fett episode. So I apologize if any of their hyped up audio slips through to the live stream.
I'm trying to figure out if I'm a winner of one of these $1 million free bets on DraftKings. I can't find it on the promos page right now. Maybe I'm a winner and they took it away because they don't want to give me my $1 million free bet. But 5 people across the country are getting a free $1 million bet on DraftKings. So if you signed up for that, if you're in a state where sports betting on DraftKings is legal, make sure you check that. You don't want to be one of the $1 million winners that misses out on your free bet. But I've got Christy Metzger alongside me as well. Christy, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Gosh, it's so hard to believe that we're at the end with the Super Bowl today. But, as always, looking forward to breaking this down with both of you guys and seeing if we can come up with a couple of sneaky plays.
All right, let's go ahead and start taking a look here. I've got the DraftKings showdown slate open. The line throughout the week has kind of jostled back and forth between about 4.5 points in favor of the Rams. Depending on where you look, it's generally around 4 points now, but they're going to have Darrell Henderson back here. I think that's kind of the big news that has broken in advance of this game. We know that Cam Akers had the fumble issues there in the first playoff game, and so Henderson might throw a little bit of a wrench into this backfield if they decide to take the hot hand approach. But Tuttle, anything on the injury front that has changed your line of thinking? We've got Uzomah is going to be active for the Bengals as well, but mainly this Rams backfield. What do you make of that situation here?
Yeah, I think it's good that it happened because it gives more options. We were kind of limited in terms of not only options we could play, but options our opponents could play then too, obviously. And I think people will kind of play Henderson just because he's so cheap. And on DraftKings specifically, there's really no value to be had. I'm taking the stance. I think he's a better non-play than play. Hope he soaks up, 15% ownership. It's just hard to imagine. I know McVay's come out and kind of had some coach speak about getting all 3 backs involved, riding the hot hand and all that. It's just hard to imagine Henderson having, any sort of sizable role coming off. Like he hasn't played since week 12. So it's been a pretty long time since he's been out. Before he went out, they were already kind of shifting him behind Sony Michel. So he's pretty clearly the third string back here in this spot. It is a showdown slate, 2 to 3 touches and happens to fall in the end zone, probably makes him optimal. So that would be a reason, to potentially play him on DraftKings, but I'm personally taking the stance that I'm not going to have exposure to him.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of in that camp as well. It's not like they're going to throw 20 carries his way, you wouldn't think, after a long absence. But let's go ahead and start kind of breaking it down here, and we'll talk captain's picks here first on DraftKings. Obviously, on most slates, the quarterbacks get the most attention in the captain spot, but the salary is a little bit tricky here if you're trying to fit in Stafford or Burrow as your captain pick on DraftKings. So, Christy, I'll start with you. Are you trying to jam in a quarterback in your captain spot, or you think maybe Kupp or Chase or Mixon is a better choice?
Yeah, I as far as the captain spot, I do find myself with a lot of builds with, looking at Cooper Kupp, getting him in there. I also, like you said, like the quarterback, Stafford, both Stafford and Burrow in there, but for the majority of my lineups, I do have quite a bit of Kupp in there. I just like how the builds look. And because there is a little bit of value, which we'll get to as we kind of break this down. I just like the way those builds look a little bit better. So yeah, maybe the quarterbacks and looking at Cooper Kupp and Jamar Chase too. Certainly have a fair amount of him in the captain spot as well.
And it's worth noting that Kupp in your captain spot on DraftKings is 17-4. So he does come a little more expensive than the quarterbacks, which surprised me a little bit when you look at our projected ownership with him still being the highest owned. But you look at his numbers throughout the year, obviously he's been fantastic. He's going to get his 10 to 12 targets in the 2 playoff games, 9 catches for 183 and a touchdown, 11 catches for 142 and 2 touchdowns. He's scored in 7 of the last 8 games. So the production keeps coming with Cooper Kupp. But Tuttle, who are you thinking is your top captain's choice here?
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing anything small field, any 3-mans, anything cash game related, it's just like, I don't know why you would go away from Cooper Kupp. Honestly, the pricing dynamics are pretty interesting, but also disappointing at the same sense. The only thing stopping Cooper Kupp from being 100% owned is the really lack of really low end value on the slate. But comparative to his production on the season, comparative to where his price has been on other showdown slates, he's really underpriced, honestly, at 11.8. So like if you're a contrarian player, you're kind of going in and thinking of hey, can I fade Cooper Kupp? At least that was my first thought when looking through pricing, and it's kind of a hard no, unfortunately, just because of how the pricing dynamics work out. So I kind of do think you eat that Kupp chalk, and then you just be a little bit more aware of your lineup construction around him and try to get unique that way, as opposed to trying to get unique by fading Kupp, I think is the move. So yeah, I think he's a fine captain option. Should mention on FanDuel, obviously half point PPR, a little less valuable over there. Totally fine playing the quarterbacks and captain over there over Kupp. But again, those are going to kind of be the chalk captains in GPPs. So if you're looking to get different, probably have to go a little bit lower in price range.
Yeah, I agree. And the FanDuel build, it's pretty easy to get both quarterbacks in there. You don't have to take the whole lot of stands. There's probably gonna be a lot of duplication over on FanDuel. I've got DraftKings up for the sample build. I mean, the same players are obviously in play, but sometimes those volume pass catchers a little less valuable on FanDuel, and you don't necessarily need the punt values quite as much if you're playing over there. If you want to chat with us during the show, we are in the free Rotogrinders Discord. So you can go to rotogrinders.com/Discord, and just sign in with your Rotogrinders credentials. You don't have to be a premium member. There are some channels that are premium only, but we do have the live stream chat channel, which we will use for this show, which you can get into as just a Rotogrinders member. So rotogrinders.com/Discord in the live stream chat channel. So that's where you'll find us during the show. I do not have to be distracted over the next 20 minutes. I'm not a big winner of the $1 million free bet on DraftKings. So sticking to the DFS lineups, it is for now, and not having to stress over what to bet $1 million on. There are 5 people out there with that luxury right now, but be interesting to see if any of those folks are on the old Twitter machine. All right. Worth noting, if you start a lineup with Kupp and Stafford on DraftKings, you're left with just $5,400 per player for your last 4 spots. So you are going to have to find some value if you're looking to play them together. Let's just talk about the 2 teams in general and maybe the other options that we might like in our flex positions. So, Christy, I'll go back to you to break down the Rams, and then I'll let Tuttle start when we break down the Bengals here. But so let's go back to the Rams side. Obviously, we know Kupp and Stafford are your safer plays. The other pass catchers, a little tricky to figure out who's going to get the most volume. I already touched on the running backs. You're going to have maybe 3 guys active, perhaps a hot hand approach. But who else do you trust here on the Rams side of the ball?
One of the guys that I think I'm definitely over the field on is Odell Beckham today. He has the upside that we're looking for, and certainly overweight there. I think this postseason he's averaging 10.3 yards per target. So I mean, he's just been doing kind of the things that he's been doing that we were accustomed to seeing back in his rookie season. So certainly like him. We talked a little bit about the running back game, and I think it's interesting because Like you said, Darrell Henderson is so cheap on DraftKings. But I also like Cam Akers too. I think, he's not getting all the work, but, I think if they get out to a lead, I certainly see them using the running backs quite a bit there. So, I certainly have a lot of interest in Akers as well. And he's at a pretty good price point too, 6,400 over on DraftKings. So I like that. I know one of the other things that I like to get in my lineups this week too are going to the kickers. I know we're not talking about Cincy yet, but McPherson really makes a good lineup build. And so I like having him in there. So both he and Matt Gay, I think, are fine plays there. And then, Blanton, I mean, once we found out that Higbee was out, I think he's just a really strong play. I mean, he should play almost every snap with Higbee out there. So, he's going to get some targets in the end zone too. So I think he makes a fine play, and if you're really looking for some punts too, Van Jefferson isn't really going to carry a lot of ownership. It's probably a better play over on FanDuel with the price and everything. But, for tournament plays, he's certainly someone to consider. And it wouldn't surprise me to see getting a touchdown there. But I would say for the Rams, for me, I would probably say the guys I'm most overweight on when, especially not using Cooper Kupp and some of the others are Odell Beckham. I think he's a really strong play today. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see him be one of the top performing wideouts on the slate.
I like you thought about Jefferson over on FanDuel. I believe he's $7K, which is one of the cheapest skill position players that, has some upside you'll find over there. So I did put him in my main tournament lineup over on FanDuel. On DraftKings, the price on Akers, I think is hard to ignore, even with the rumblings of the other running backs being involved. Akers at 6,400. I mean, I mentioned we've only got in this kind of, if you wanted to start, say, whether it's a GPP or a cash lineup with Kupp and Stafford, you've only got 5,450 per player. You could get Akers in there. Christy mentioned the kickers. You throw the next Justin Tucker in there and Evan McPherson. Okay, you've filled up two of those spots. You still got 5,700 for your last two. Obviously, we can talk about the Cincinnati side a little bit here. But that Akers at that price makes that lineup build doable. Blanton at 4,600 makes that lineup doable. And if if you're not playing both Kupp and Stafford together, maybe you get Beckham in there instead, and that opens up a little bit more salary. See, out in this build we've got 5,700 per player. But let's say, okay, it's a GPP lineup, and I'm going to intentionally fade Kupp. So if you were looking to do that, maybe you're playing Stafford at captain, and then you put Beckham in there instead. And then all of a sudden, instead of 5,700 per player for my last two spots, I've got 7,500 per player for my last two spots. So that opens up, $3,600 in total salary by playing Beckham and Stafford instead of Kupp and Stafford. Obviously, that's risky. But if you think Beckham gets the touchdowns, Kupp's going to be super highly owned, maybe you give that a look in some of your tournament builds. Tuttle, what do you think about the Rams here?
All right. Yep. I'm back. Sorry about that, guys.
I didn't even realize you were gone.
Perfect. I shouldn't have mentioned it.
I'm glad you were back by the time I addressed you. Christy was up in my little camera thing in the corner, so I didn't realize you were gone.
Legit perfect timing. So yeah, the Rams. So I don't know 100% what you guys said overall, so it's hard to agree or disagree with you guys. But we talked about the running back situation a little bit earlier. But in terms of pass catchers that are not Cooper Kupp, I do think Odell is probably going to be the next highest owned. Obviously interesting, has shown a decent enough ceiling, interesting captain option in tournaments, things like that. I think the guy that's not going to get owned, and we are currently showing projected ownership actually less than Kendall Blanton, and that's Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's obviously been not good of late. He's kind of hard to click to put into your lineups, but honestly, that's good. Honestly, like this, where we're going to have tons and tons of overlap, you kind of are looking for those guys that not everybody wants to really click on. Van Jefferson is one of those guys. Started out the year a little bit better than what we've seen of late. High ADOT player, so we're looking, one reception could take it to the house. Low price. I do like playing him over Kendall Blanton, who I think people are a little too excited about after last game. And then he came up and is priced at 4,600 on DraftKings now. So Kendall Blanton is somebody I'm kind of looking to go underweight on. And in the same price point, I'm looking to capitalize then on Van Jefferson. I just think what we saw last week from Blanton is probably the best that we're going to get. It's possibly he gets a touchdown, but even at that price point, it might not be enough. So Van Jefferson is the guy that I'm trying to get to if I'm looking for, a player that's less owned that still has at least a little bit of upside.
Yeah, we like Jefferson as well. I like him on FanDuel at 7K.
Yep.
DraftKings at 5,200 to be a little less owned over there. So it makes him a more interesting tournament play on DK, but it can definitely be a nice last piece on FanDuel as well. We like Akers, even though there's been rumblings of the running backs. Akers, I thought that they would limit him a little more against the 49ers after the fumbles, but still seems like he's the guy that they trust the most. Remains to be seen if they'll trust him on the goal line with the other guys active, but at 6,400, that's a pretty fair price on DK and helps to make that lineup work.
How do you guys think the general public, non DFS Twitter, non people who play DFS, people that are just throwing in lineups for the first time for the Super Bowl, how are they going to treat Cam Akers? Because I've heard I like Akers too, and I thought that would be kind of a non-popular approach, liking Akers, because it seemed like kind of the hot take was to go with Sony Michel, even some Darrell Henderson. So Mr. Joe Schmo putting lineup in for the first time, is he going to click on Cam Akers or not?
That's a really good question. Because we are in our own little bubble.
Right.
I mean, I would think so if you look at the carries and you look at the price, but I don't know. That's a really good question.
That's a really good question. Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know the answer to, and it informs your take on everything, right? Because beginning of the week when we did the expert survey for RG, I was like, okay, Akers is going to go under-owned. I like him a lot because of that. Yep. People are going to want to play Sony Michel. I would rather just go overweight on Cam Akers, because I think within his range of outcomes in this game, I think is he sees 90% of the raw RB touches.
Right. I mean, we've only got him at 30% ownership in the flex, which I think is low. So,
I agree.
I think that's an indication that at least in terms of our projections, we think that average Joe is less excited about Akers than the pros are. But I don't know. I mean, he might end up popping up higher than that, but I'll have more than what we currently have him projected at. That's for sure.
Yeah, same.
All right, Todd, I'll let you start on the Cincinnati side. So they just kind of keep defying the odds. I'm not necessarily protesting with my Raven shirt on here. I don't actively dislike the Bengals. So my wife is openly rooting for them because she wants them to win. And with us being kind of St. Louis ties, we don't love the Rams either. So we're neutral, I guess, in this game. So the Bengals, though, they keep surprising. They continue to be underdogs and they just keep winning. And big game Joe Burrow did it in college. He's done it so far here in the playoffs, and it's pretty foolish to discount them at this point. So yes, they're on the road, but the Rams don't exactly, they had maybe 20% of the fan support against the 49ers. So it's not like it's going to be this raucous atmosphere with all Rams fans, given all the corporate folks that buy up the expensive tickets for this game. So I think, just treating it like the Bengals are at a disadvantage because it's a road game, I think is a little bit foolish. The one area that does worry me is the Rams pass rush against their offensive line, which we saw it was a problem against the Titans in the first game of the playoffs. But if they can give Burrow time, they can certainly win this game. So Tuttle, your thoughts on some of the Bengals guys?
Yeah. So agree with most of your thoughts here. I think this is another spot though, very hard to handicap from, and this game in general is very hard to handicap ownership perspective or ownership wise, because a lot more public money or kind of just casuals playing than we typically see. And it kind of seems like the casuals are on Cincinnati. They're the better story. They're honestly more easy. They're easier to root for. And so it will be interesting ownership wise. And I mentioned that because you look at some of these ownership numbers, again, using our projected ownership, and like a guy like T Higgins to me, like I think is under projected, just from like a DFS model perspective. His price is so cheap on DraftKings that I find T Higgins popping up in so many of my builds throughout the season. There has not been a huge difference between T Higgins and Jamar Chase. T Higgins, I would say, has the lower floor, and we hit that floor more often than Jamar Chase, but they've shown fairly similar ceilings. But the salary savings on T Higgins on DraftKings is just extremely helpful when creating lineups. So I'll be interested to see, the ownership between Chase and Higgins, because I would say from like a general public perspective, Chase would end up being the higher guy. But in terms of actual lineup builds, in terms of actual projections, T is the guy that I think is the better play from, point per dollar and that sort of thing. So I expect to have a lot of T Higgins on DraftKings specifically, much less of a gap between the two on FanDuel, where I think you just play whoever you want there. Jamar Chase is the slightly better option there, but again, I think fairly similar overall. In terms of, other options, Tyler Boyd, completely fine playing him, is kind of one of the cheap alternatives. And then Joe Mixon is the other guy that's interesting to me too. Kind of similar. When I opened up our projected ownership, I was a little bit surprised to see him projected for higher ownership than both Jamar Chase and T Higgins, because he's the guy then that I'm kind of finding out of my builds, where I'm prioritizing Chase and T Higgins. So I kind of entered the slate thinking that Joe Mixon's going to kind of be the odd man out in terms of the higher priced options. I do think I'm holding to that. I think I'll have a slight disagreement with our projected ownership in that sense, that I think Mixon's going to come in lower owned than Higgins and Chase. And I think it's like, I don't really love the matchup for Joe Mixon. I expect them to be playing from behind, which could mean a little less work in terms of passing game work. They might bring Samaje Perine in for some of those situations. So like, I don't like Joe Mixon a ton as a play, but I think as an ownership option, low ownership option, especially in smaller field stuff or higher stake stuff, I think Mixon's like the GPP play in those tournaments.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where the ownership comes in there. I mean, it's obviously easier to click on his name given his status as the clear running back on early downs and in, close game situations. But we did see Perine have, some big plays there against the Chiefs, including that big touchdown catch right before halftime. So Mixon to me at just at 9,600 in the flex, like that's not that much cheaper than Burrow and Chase. So I'm probably going to come in a little bit under on Mixon, but with a little more exposure to the passing game, again, with the thought that I think the Bengals will probably be playing from behind as well. But Christy, your thoughts on these Bengals guys here?
Yeah, I kind of see the same game script where, I kind of see the Bengals playing from behind. And so some of the receivers being, more of the optimal plays. But to Tuttle's point, Mixon, certainly looks like he is a good GPP play just from the standpoint that he isn't going to carry as much ownership. And most people are looking to jam in the Jamar Chases and T Higgins in their lineup. So, I mean, I certainly, I love Chase. I love Higgins. I mean, Higgins probably is more of the optimal, cash type game play just because of the price differential there. So certainly like those guys. Tyler Boyd hasn't, done a ton this postseason outside of scoring a touchdown. But he's certainly worth a look, because we've also seen him, if Burrow, kind of looks his way one or two times, could certainly see him having a decent sized game too. The one that's interesting to me is CJ Uzomah, and he's been dealing with an MCL sprain, and I found him to be, I really like him on my FanDuel builds because he's just 500. There's just a 500 differential between he and Van Jefferson. So I like going overweight on Uzomah. I mean, he has, multiple touchdown upside just because they do look to some of their tight ends in the red zone. He's had a great season. He gets plenty of looks from Burrow. So I think he's someone that I'm taking a little bit more of a stand on and going overweight with him. And then, we talked a little bit about the kickers. I think both kickers are great plays today. We've seen Cincinnati really kind of stall out, kind of in the postseason a little bit. So, I could see, looking back at McPherson in the last couple of games, he's put up, 14, 15 points and, you get a 50+ yard field goal and pretty soon, just like getting a touchdown. So I definitely a little bit more overweight on the kickers and probably looking to get a little bit different with CJ Ozuma and for sure having plenty of Higgins and Chase too, but hoping to get a little bit different with some of those guys.
Yeah, on this kind of sample build that we put together, you get somebody like Higgins in there. It fits that mold of, you need around an average of 7,500 per player. If you're back to that cup build, maybe you end up with Uzoma or Tyler Boyd in there to make that work a little better. And you can see this build here. If you put Boyd in there, 9,600 for your last spot. So mix and fits. Just be mindful if you're playing these big GPPs. Pretty much every zeroed out lineup is going to be duplicated. So even in a build like this, I would almost rather put Higgins there and leave $2,000 on the table than play mix and zero it out in GPPs. Obviously, in cash game type builds or a 3-man or something, you're fine, utilizing all that salary. But Mixon would zero that lineup out, and you can bet don't play this very lineup in a GPP. Because 300 of your closest friends are going to do it, and not that sharing $1 million first place prize or anything with any number of people is a bad thing, but if you're looking to reduce your duplication, maybe leaving some salary on the table, never a bad idea in these huge tournaments. All right, we've got 4 minutes until rosters lock, so make sure. I know obviously there's probably a lot of distractions going on out there. You got everybody's getting excited. You're making food. You got your party going. Just make sure you don't have your dummy lineup in there 100 times in the big GPP. Be one way to quickly ruin the party. So 3 minutes until lock now. And, the one area we kind of always don't discuss a whole lot is the defenses. But Tuttle, you got any interest in these in either of these defenses tonight?
Yeah, and I usually don't. So that tells you a little bit about the pricing on the defense on DraftKings. Rams specifically. You mentioned, Justin, the offensive line struggles for Cincinnati. We kind of saw it where when Cincinnati beat the Titans, they were able to score at least a few points, but Tennessee's defense still ended up doing extremely well because they had 9 sacks. I would not be all that surprised if we see something similar, maybe not 9 sacks, but maybe 5 sacks and an interception, something like that. And if that happens, I think they certainly have a shot to be in optimal lineups. That could be enough to beat out one of the kickers, that sort of thing. So yeah, I have more exposure to Rams defense than I typically would have to defense on any other showdown slate.
Yeah, I like the Rams defense as well, particularly in builds where maybe you think they're going to play with a lead. And we've only got them, both defenses around 10 or 15% ownership. And, like you hinted at there, we have seen that on a few slates be a difference maker. So, Christy, any defense interest or maybe anybody else that you could consider as a cheap play or something that we didn't really mention?
Yeah, I do agree on the Rams defense. And I also think it's not a bad idea to even throw the Bengals defense into the mix because, especially if you think the Bengals win, they're good at creating turnovers for sure. And yeah, I think just to get a little bit different, they're not going to carry as much ownership. They're 3,200 on DraftKings. So I think getting exposure to defense and kickers is certainly not a bad route to go. And again, gets you a little bit different off of some of the chalk.
All right. With that, we are down to about 30 seconds left until lock. And by the time this goes through the airwaves, we'll basically be at lock. So want to thank everybody for joining us here as we head up to kickoff of the Super Bowl between the Rams and the Bengals. Should be a really interesting game. Good luck to all of you out there with your lineup builds and with your bets and with your squares pools and all of that good stuff that goes along with Super Bowl Sunday. We, of course, thank you for checking us out all season long at Rotogrinders. If you want to join the community, rotogrinders.com, sign up, get yourself a premium subscription as well. We've got plenty of great content for all the sports, golf kicking back into gear again. Hopefully we've got baseball here in a month and a half or so. We'll see what becomes of the labor talks there with MLB, but that will be coming down the pipeline soon as well. And then we'll have the stretch run of the NBA and NHL seasons and those respective DFS sports too. So still plenty to like, and frankly, maybe some softer competition for a little while in the golf and NBA and NHL streets with people, using up their football money with no more football to go. So check us out, rotogrinders.com. Enjoy the game, everybody. For our producer, Eli, and for Christy and Tuttle, I am Justin. We will see you later.